She walked for 4 miles, barefoot, through freezing February snow. 15-year-old Stephanie Ann Bowman passed farmhouse after farmhouse but never knocked on a single door. Why? Because he was following her in his car, watching, waiting. When hypothermia forced her to collapse, he left her there and drove away. But here's what makes your blood run cold. Stephanie wasn't taken by Denver's serial offender. She was taken by one of them. Between 1975 and 1995, at least 6 different serial offenders hunted the same streets in Denver, Colorado at the exact same time. 6 predators, 50 victims, 2 decades of terror, and nobody even realized these cases were connected. The question that haunts investigators remains: if 6 serial offenders could operate in one city for 20 years without being detected, how many more are still out there that we don't know about? The story begins on a summer day in 1976. 21-year-old Rebecca Kellison kissed her family goodbye and left to enjoy a Friday night out with her sister. She planned to take the bus home the next morning, maybe hitchhike if the bus was late. She never made it. Her clothes were found buried in a field 2 years later. Her body was never recovered. Animals had scattered her remains across what would later become Denver International Airport. Rebecca was not the first victim. She was just the first one people started paying attention to. Because in the years that followed, the bodies kept appearing. Young women, teenagers, some as young as 15 years old, all found deceased, all posed, all left in remote locations where nobody would find them for days or weeks. The perpetrator had a pattern. He targeted women who were vulnerable, runaways, those struggling with addiction, women with troubled pasts whose society had already forgotten. He picked them up along East Colfax Avenue, a street that ran through the heart of Denver, a place where desperation met opportunity, where young women with nowhere else to go stood on corners hoping for enough money to survive another day. In August 1979, police found 16-year-old Kimberly Jean Graben near Interstate 70. She had been severely harmed. Officers struggled to identify her body due to the condition she was found in. Tips poured in. Over 200 people called with information. Someone had seen her getting into a car with a blonde man. But the leads went nowhere. The case went cold. Then came February 1980. 19-year-old Cynthia Boyd was found deceased on a roadway near a landfill. She had been left without clothing, abandoned like she didn't matter. 1 month later, 15-year-old Stephanie Ann Bowman suffered an even more horrific fate. Someone forced her to walk nearly 4 miles through freezing cold, without proper clothing and terrified. Her footprints told the story. She walked in ditches, trying to stay hidden. She passed several farmhouses but never stopped for help. Why? Because her attacker followed her in his car. When she collapsed from hypothermia, he abandoned her there. She passed away just 30 minutes before someone found her. The brutality shocked even hardened detectives. But worse was coming. In January 1981, 17-year-old Antoinette Parks had a fight with her boyfriend. She was 7 months pregnant. She stormed out of his house angry and upset. The next morning, workers found what they thought was a mannequin lying in a field. It was Antoinette. She'd been attacked multiple times. Her attacker left a marking on her body, a sign associated with informants. Her boyfriend was the obvious suspect. Her brother even confronted him physically, demanding he confess. The man refused. He swore he was innocent. And 40 years later, DNA would prove he was telling the truth. Antoinette's real attacker was a man named Joe Michael Irvin. Irvin was a ghost. He harmed at least 4 women between 1978 and 1981. Madeleine Fury Livaudes, a 33-year-old mother, attacked in her own bedroom. Dolores Barajas, 53 years old, taken on what was supposed to be her last day of work before returning home. Gwendolyn Harris, 27, found deceased just 1 block from where Irvin lived. And Antoinette, the pregnant teenager who passed away in that field. All attacked with violence. All left like they meant nothing. Police did not connect these cases for over 40 years. Why? Because Irvin passed away before anyone suspected him. In June 1981, an Aurora police officer pulled him over for drunk driving. Her name was Deborah Sue Kaur. She was 26 years old and had been on the job for just 1 year. Irvin used her own weapon against her. Then he harmed a young Aurora Police Explorer scout named Glenn Spies, who tried to help her. Officer Kaur died. Spies survived but was seriously injured. Police arrested Irvin and locked him in solitary confinement. Days later, guards found him deceased in his cell by his own hand. He left a note confessing to the attack on Officer Kaur, but he never mentioned the 4 women he harmed before that night. Their families waited 41 years for answers. Answers that only came in January 2022 when DNA technology finally identified Irvin as their perpetrator. But Irvin was not working alone. Not in the sense of a partner, but in the sense that other offenders were hunting at the exact same time on the exact same streets. Vincent Groves was one of them, and he might have been the worst of all. Groves grew up in a quiet suburb of Denver. He was popular in high school, a basketball star, voted most likely to succeed. Teachers loved him. Friends looked up to him. Nobody suspected that beneath that charming smile lived a monster. But after college, something changed. Groves started spending time on East Colfax Avenue. He dealt substances. He became friendly with those in the underground economy. And sometime in the late 1970s, he started taking lives. His first confirmed victim was a young woman named Emma Genfor, 25 years old, found deceased in her bathtub in March 1979. Then came Joyce Remy on July 4th that same year, 23 years old, found deceased and posed in a humiliating manner. By the time 1979 ended, Groves had taken at least 3 lives, but police had no idea they were dealing with a serial offender. Groves was smart. He varied his methods slightly. He moved bodies to different locations. He never left obvious evidence. And most importantly, he targeted women that society did not care about. Those struggling with addiction, those working on the streets, women whose disappearances barely made the news. When he was finally caught in 1981 for the death of 17-year-old Tammy Woodrum, police thought it was an isolated incident. He claimed she overdosed. The autopsy showed she had been assaulted and died by violence. Groves went to prison for 12 years. During that time, the death stopped, but nobody made the connection. When he was released in February 1987, the nightmare started again. Within weeks, he picked up a woman named Sheila Washington. He took her to a motel, gave her substances, then attempted to harm her. A neighbor broke down the door and saved her life, but Sheila could not identify her attacker. Groves walked free. Over the next year and a half, he took at least 7 more lives, maybe more. Rhonda Fisher, Zabra Mason, Fa Johnson, Juanita Lovato. The bodies kept appearing in fields, under bridges, left in ditches. Always found deceased by violent means, often assaulted. Left in degrading positions for their families to find. In August 1988, a man preparing for a triathlon heard a car pull into the alley behind his house at 5:30 in the morning. Curious, he looked over his fence. He saw a tall African-American man removing a body from his trunk. The witness did not try to stop him. Instead, he quietly went inside and called police. They found the body of 35-year-old Pamela Montgomery in that alley. She had been left there without dignity or care. The witness could not identify the man he saw, but he remembered the car. And that car belonged to Vincent Groves. Police staked out his house, disguised as city workers cleaning gutters. When Groves stepped outside, they arrested him. He was convicted of 2 cases of taking human life: Juanita Lovato and Diane Mancera. The evidence was overwhelming. DNA, witness testimony, and the fact that Groves was the last person seen with multiple victims. He received a life sentence. And on Halloween Day 1996, he passed away in prison from hepatitis C and liver failure. He never confessed, never gave families the closure they deserved. But in 2012, 16 years after his death, DNA technology caught up with his crimes. Police linked him to 4 more cases from 1979: Emma Jennifer, Joyce Remy, Peggy Cuff, and circumstantial evidence tied him to Pamela Montgomery's death in 1988. Detectives believe Groves harmed as many as 24 women, maybe more. At his peak, he was taking 2 lives every month. He might be Colorado's most prolific serial offender in history. But even with Groves behind bars in the 1980s, women kept dying. Because there were others. A man named Billy Edwin Reed was convicted in 2005 for taking the lives of 2 women in 1989, Lynell Williams and Lisa Kelly. Both worked on the streets, both found deceased, both left in degrading positions. DNA proved Reed was responsible. Police suspect he harmed many more, but without evidence, they cannot prove it. Then there are the perpetrators who have never been identified. The man who harmed Stephanie Bowman and left her to freeze on that lonely road. The person who took 12-year-old Sabrina Judish and left her body in a field wearing only her camp t-shirt. The predator who harmed 18-year-old Carolyn Walker and left her near Interstate 70. The monster who took Donna Sue Wayne and left her remains against a tree in a humiliating position. In 2008, a detective noticed something strange. He was reviewing old case files when he saw the pattern. Women left in degrading positions, all found deceased by similar means, all left in rural areas. He assembled a team. They compiled a list of 16 victims they believed were harmed by one person. But as they dug deeper, they realized the truth was far more complicated. These were not the victims of one serial offender. They were the victims of at least 6 different perpetrators operating at the same time in the same city. Vincent Groves, Joe Michael Irvin, Billy Edwin Reed, and at least 3 more who have never been identified. Some harmed people for years without being caught. Others stopped suddenly for reasons nobody understands. The Denver police created a cold case unit funded by federal grants. They used cutting-edge DNA technology. They re-examined evidence that had been sitting in storage for decades. And slowly, piece by piece, they started solving these cases. In 2012, they identified Vincent Groves in 4 additional incidents. In 2019, they used genetic genealogy to link Donald Perea to the 1981 death of Jeannie Moore. In 2022, they exhumed Joe Michael Irvin's body and proved he was responsible for 4 women's deaths. But many cases remain unsolved. Families still wait for answers. They wait to know who harmed their loved ones and why. Some of these women were mothers. Some were daughters. Some were sisters. They had dreams. They had futures. And they had their lives stolen by men who saw them as nothing more than objects to be used and discarded. The most haunting part of this story is how easily it could have been stopped if police had connected the dots earlier, if society had cared more about missing vulnerable women and runaways, if DNA technology had existed in the 1970s. But it did not. And so the perpetrators kept hunting. They continued their crimes until they were too old, too sick, or too careless to continue. Today, detectives estimate that between 17 and 50 women were harmed by the Denver serial offenders. The exact number may never be known. Some bodies were never found. Some evidence was lost or contaminated. Some cases will remain mysteries forever. But thanks to advances in technology, more families are getting answers every year. More perpetrators are being identified even decades after their deaths. Justice may be slow, but it is coming. The question that haunts investigators is simple. How many more victims are out there? How many women vanished without a trace? How many families are still waiting for their loved one to come home? The Denver serial offender cases are not closed. They are ongoing. Every year, detectives review old evidence. They run new DNA tests. They follow new leads. And sometimes, they make a breakthrough. But the real lesson of this story is not about the perpetrators. It is about the victims. About the women who were forgotten by society, who were dismissed because of their circumstances, who were seen as less important simply because of how they lived. These women mattered. They deserved protection. They deserved justice, and their families deserved answers. Denver will never forget what happened between 1975 and 1995. It cannot, because the scars of those decades run too deep. Too many families were destroyed. Too many lives were lost. And too many questions remain unanswered. The monsters who hunted in the shadows of Denver may be gone, but their legacy remains. A reminder that evil can hide anywhere, even behind a friendly smile on a quiet street corner. This story is not just about the past. It is about the present. If you found this story important, please share it. Spread awareness about these crimes. Help these families get the justice they deserve. And subscribe to our channel to be part of this journey. We cover true crime stories that matter. Stories that expose the darkness in our society. Stories that remind us to stay vigilant and aware, because we never know when evil might cross our path. But Denver is not the only place where this happened. Right now on this channel, we have covered similar cases from across America. Cases where multiple predators operated at the same time without being detected. Cases where victims were forgotten simply because of how they lived. Cases where families waited decades for answers. If this story affected you, then you need to see our other videos. Each one is carefully researched. Each one honors victims who deserve to be remembered. We have cases involving DNA breakthroughs that solved cold cases after 40 years. We have stories about perpetrators who hid behind normal lives while committing terrible crimes. And we have investigations that are still ongoing today. Take a moment to check out our playlist. Learn about the patterns. Understand how these crimes happen. Because awareness is the first step toward prevention. These stories matter. These victims matter. And by watching and sharing, you help keep their memories alive. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next video.